This video is about the 2020 US presidential election and about elections and politics more broadly. Now, when it comes to elections, most people only care about winning. Winning is not just everything, winning is the only thing. However, this is actually the wrong attitude, and the very best kind of election you can find yourself in is one where you are not afraid to lose. Before I explain why, I do want to point out that this video is not linked to the specific outcome of the 2020 US presidential election. That is, I'm not posting this because Biden won and because Trump lost. I'd be posting the exact same thing if Trump had won and Biden had lost, or yes, if Kanye West or somebody else had won. The lesson from this video is equally applicable no matter who wins and no matter what side of the political aisle you happen to fall on. Before I explain the surprising silver lining to losing elections, I want to tell you about two games that I do not play and will not play, and the first one is Russian Roulette. The reason for that should be pretty obvious. There's far too high of a chance that I'm just gonna die if I play Russian Roulette. All obviousness aside, notice a couple of interesting things about why Russian Roulette is such a bad game. First of all, if you lose, you don't just lose, you die. You're donezo, you're out. You can't ever play the game again. Your downside, in some sense, is infinite, being totally removed not only from the game, but also from life. However, your upside is very, very, very limited. The best possible outcome from playing Russian Roulette is just that you're alive, which you already were before you decided to play. Specifically notice that one thing that makes it such a bad game is that you cannot play it over time. Eventually, you lose, you die, and you're gone. Contrast that to so many other good games that people enjoy that you can play many, many, many times and still get great satisfaction and benefit out of. The second game that I don't play and probably will never play again is the video game Super Smash Bros. Now, I understand that Super Smash Bros. Is a very popular video game that is loved and played by millions. However, I am not one of them. And the reason why is equally simple. I'm terrible at it. I grew up without any kind of console gaming system. In fact, I'm so ignorant about these things, I can't even tell you what platform Super Smash Bros. Is supposed to be played on. I have a total lack of experience and knowledge at the game. Not only do I not understand the game mechanics and the options within the game very well, but also I don't have any of the muscle memory or practice associated with hundreds of hours of playing the game. So the very few times that I have played, the only thing I can do is mash buttons stupidly and meaninglessly and pointlessly and wait to be killed and ejected from the game. In fact, I'm so far behind the curve on skill that I don't even know if I could reasonably make up that difference in skill. I don't have a console gaming system. I can't log those hundreds of hours necessary to become good at the game. So notice what makes it such a bad game for me is not only the fact that I don't win, but also that I never have any prospects for winning and the fact that I can't really learn and progress over time. Not only am I not very good at it, I'm really not likely to become much better at it because of the limited number of times I'm going to play the game. So what does this have to do with elections and politics? Well, elections and politics have many game-like characteristics. Although the analogy does fall apart if pushed too far, there are some very instructive lessons and some striking comparisons. Both involve rules, both involve acceptable and unacceptable moves, both involve win conditions and loss conditions. There are sore winners and there are sore losers. There is such a thing as cheating. There are rules, parameters, and procedures for how to play the game. Now, like I said, the analogy can break apart if pushed too far, but there are some very instructive lessons, and two lessons specifically that I want to pull out have reference to those two games that I don't play and will not play. The first one has to do with Russian Roulette. A good political game, a good election, is one where losing isn't going to knock you out of the game. It's one where losing is not fatal, literally or metaphorically. It's one where the consequences of losing are not too high. Now, in the United States and many other similar countries, we have pretty much mastered and implemented this rule. Losing an election is not catastrophic and is not fatal. Yes, there are policy consequences, and sometimes those policy consequences for your country can be quite severe. However, when candidates lose elections, we don't shoot them in the back of the head and then round up all their supporters and execute them. Instead, what we say is, hey look, you lost, but we still want you around. The fact that losing an election is not catastrophic, it's not an existential threat, gives a lot of stability to our political system. It means that although, yes, there will be consequences to losing, you can still afford to lose, and therefore you can afford to play this game over time. It's a good game. This is especially important for elections and politics because remember that in elections and politics, there is a winning and there is a losing side. The nature of the political game has to be such that losing is not penalized to such a degree that the losers need to leave the game. The fact that losing elections is not fatal for the losing side also reveals another attribute of a good political game. A good political game is one where you would rather play and run the risk of losing sometimes than to not play. In other words, it's better to be part of the process. It's better to be part of the political game and, lose, say, half the elections or maybe even 40% of the elections, rather than secede, tip over the table, take your toys home, and not play the game anymore. Political games of this sort are incredibly stable over time because they reward winners to an appropriate degree, and they also don't punish losers too badly. The second distinctive lesson, the one that I want to pull out from Super Smash Bros. To the political game, is that a good game is one where the losers can grow and progress over time. When political parties or ideological blocs lose elections, what they have the opportunity to do is fundamentally to go home and rethink their lives. They're able to assess their performance during the election, to see what worked and to see what didn't, and then to come back in 2 to 4 years with a new and improved political identity and message. In the long run, not only is this better for the losing party, but it's also better for the society as a whole because the ideological blocs and factions can improve over time. Because each election is not a single winner-take-all event, but just one event in a series of events, we have the opportunity to learn and improve over time. In some sense, the real genius of an election is that we have actually found a way to take ideological conflict, even very bitter ideological conflict, and harness it to improve our society. We've weaponized our disagreements. We've made it so that when we disagree, we can pick the winning side, and then the losing side has the opportunity to refine their arguments, to refine their positions, to come up with better policies and better candidates, and then run those in another 2 to 4 years. The fact that ideological control of the White House and of Congress changes routinely in the United States indicates that, yes, the American population does in fact punish politicians for bad decisions, and yes, does in fact reward them for good ones. This is also, by the way, why I'm actually not terribly worried about the prospect of anyone seceding from the United States, some evidence to the contrary notwithstanding. In the aftermath of the 2016 presidential election, when Donald Trump became president, #CalExit, or California Exit, a threat of California secession, was trending on Twitter. However, these threats never materialized, because California Democrats were smart enough to know that their best chance at political success was not to tip over the table, take their toys home, and sulk. Instead, it was to refine their message, get better candidates, and try again in 2018 and 2020. And largely, they've been rewarded for that electorally. The same thing is true for Republicans. The fact that they've lost in 2020 does not mean that they're out of the game. It just means that they have an opportunity to go home, to rethink their lives, to lick their wounds, and then to come back in 2022 with better candidates and better positions. That's something that they're fully capable of, and it's also something that not only they will benefit from if they do it, but also that the entirety of the American political game will benefit from. And that's why in the United States and many other countries with similar governmental systems, losing an election just is not the end of the world. Instead, it can be, and it should be, and it often is, just an opportunity to learn in order to benefit your own ideological faction and also to benefit the country as a whole. In large part, the stability of political systems like the United States is due precisely to these two lessons. First, that winners are relatively merciful and that losers are relatively unpenalized, and also that we keep the losers around and give them more chances. Those two factors help to ensure that the political game is a good one for everyone to play. Now you might be thinking, well, yes, Joseph, but this is a little bit oversimplistic. Politics isn't always like a game. Sometimes the consequences are more dire. They are more severe, and losing an election does pose an existential threat in one way or another. And in times like that, when losing an election does pose an existential threat, it's not time to play nicely with the other side, it's time for violence. And regarding that, fundamentally, yes, I agree. Like probably most of the other 7.5 billion people on this planet, I do absolutely believe that there are times when violence, armed insurrection, rebellion, or civil war are justified and perhaps even morally required. Even putting aside extreme measures like that, there are many multilateral and negotiated ways to change the rules of a game, from legislation to constitutional amendments to court cases to public referenda. However, even when those extreme violent measures are justified, they can in fact only be a temporary stopgap. There is still hanging over all of us the great dominating overarching question. That is, how can we make a good political game? How can we make one that appropriately rewards winners without penalizing losers to too great of a degree? How can we make a political game that is good to play not just once, but in successive iterations over time? And of course, how can we give the losers of the political game the best chance to rehabilitate and improve themselves and come back in the next election cycle smarter and better? So that's why the best kind of election is one that you are not afraid to lose. I would be really interested to hear what you think about all of this in the comments below. What other helpful lessons can we get from games in order to improve our politics, and where does that analogy break down? Maybe most importantly, what, if any, changes need to be made to the political game in order to make it a good game to play progressively over time? Also, if you like this video, you may want to check out the video I made a while ago about the Mos Maiorum, which I'm going to link to up here and then also down in the description. It talks about the rules of the social game and why it can be so difficult and tricky to renegotiate them, and you might find it interesting. Thanks, as always, for watching. You all help to make YouTube a great game for me and for other Joseph to play, and we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.